I still tell stories of how me and my grandmother used to protect our land in the village back then when I was young. They thought it's the government wanting to grab land from them. When we accumulate whatever each individual is doing, then we would have a sustainable forest.
Welcome to a new episode of the Food Forest podcast. And today we are in Zambia. We're meeting Jyde Hamoonga. He's a policy influencing and communication specialist with World Vision Zambia, currently leading the scaling efforts of FMNR, Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration. And we already had a fantastic episode before with Tony Rinaldo, who was also very big in FMNR. So definitely also listen to that one if you want to delve more in what FMNR is specifically. Welcome, Jyde. How are you doing?
Good, thank you, Luis. Nice to be here to talk about what we do here in Zambia, scaling FMNR. So I'm really honored to be here.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit more about Zambia? What kind of country is Zambia for people who has never heard about Zambia?
So Zambia is a landlocked country in southern Africa, or we are a land-linked country. We are surrounded by all other countries, but it's a beautiful country, warm, and people are very hospitable. One of the things that people can easily find out about Zambia is that we host part of the mighty Victoria Falls on our border with Zimbabwe. But it's wooded forest, most of it. Still a lot of land available for such. But also I think the coming in of FMNR signifies that there's been quite some degradation that is going on, and we need to reverse that. But generally, it's a very warm country of about 21 million people. I think it's one country that one can visit, especially if we have a good rain season. You have about 3 or 4 falls where you can go and visit. And also the landscape is beautiful if you are driving through most parts of the country.
I've looked pictures and films before this episode, and I was really blown away with how beautiful it is.
It is a beautiful country.
The falls are like world famous, but I'm curious about the work you're doing with FMNR. Maybe for the people who haven't heard about FMNR, can you tell me a little bit what it is and how you are developing it?
Okay, so FMNR is the Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration. So in World Vision Zambia, we have 2 strands of FMNR. So we have what we call a catalyst project, the Sustainable Land Restoration Project, actually SLR. SLR stands for Sustainable Land Restoration. So it's a catalyst project, and we are working in 3 districts of Zambia. 2 districts are in eastern part of Zambia, and 1 district is in the central part of Zambia. Actually, today, right now, I'm in the central part of Zambia, where we are helping our 3 partnering chiefdoms to form bylaws to protect their land, and also see how they can endeavor into FMNR more, but also general environmental protection and management. But also on a larger scale, Zambia has got a business plan to scale FMNR for 10 years under the scaling strand of FMNR, where we are doing also direct implementation, like what we do in the Catalyst project, but we are also scaling through partnerships. So any organization in the regreening space that works in Zambia and is willing to work with us, we can scale FMNR in those parts, because FMNR is really low cost, it's easy to replicate, and can be embedded with any regreening strategy that an organization is doing. So this is what we're doing in Zambia in terms of FMNR. So those 2 strands of FMNR through partnerships in terms of scaling, but also in direct programming, just to make sure that we build enough evidence to show how potent FMNR is in regenerating degraded landscapes.
So in a lot of countries in the world, farming and nature are seen as two separate things. And I'm convinced that this is one of the reasons that we're getting very close to ecological collapse worldwide. FMNR does a very interesting thing. They combine farming and nature more. They actually use the farmer as like the way to regenerate nature. How does that work in practice? Like,
So
give me an example of like a farmer you know who really regenerates nature.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. One of our champions here, FMNR champions, Axon Banda, actually regenerates on his farmland. So right where he farms, he leaves trees on a distance, like instead of cutting down everything in the field, so he leaves trees dotted around there and plants where there are no trees in terms of his maize and other crops. But he also integrates the climate smart agricultural practices in the field, where he plants some nitrogen fixing plants, just to also, because FMNR, natural occurring species, don't grow in straight lines. So they are dotted around, and so you cannot determine where the sprouts will be. So with FMNR, he continues to prune and tender instead of cutting down everything that is already existing naturally, but also to supplement that with a deliberate nitrogen fixing tree. So these, he works, of course, we are in partnership with the forestry department. So they'll get these seedlings and plant it so that they help with the growing of crops. So it's intercropping. It's doing a lot of things in one field, including the regenerating of trees, which is so good because, the leaves that fall into the ground become fertilizer, they become mulch, and they help retain moisture. The roots are good for filtration, and moisture remains a bit more in the ground. So I'll tell you one thing, Zambia has had a drought. I think in the past 2 years, the rains were not so good, and most areas really had a big drought. So having trees around to keep a little bit of moisture and help with water recharge and retention is one of those things that is very helpful with FMNR, but also putting back fertility into the soil using the litter or the leaves that fall off, improving the biodiversity in the farming area is really something that is helpful with FMNR.
Yeah, it's a bit like how they use chop and drop in syntropic agriculture, right?
Yes. So the chop and drop also is part of what I mentioned earlier on, where you intentionally plant nitrogen fixing plants in the ground. You chop them, and then once they rot there, they become part of the manure or fertilizer, and then they will regenerate and sprout every year, which is like that. But also the naturally occurring species, some of them like the acacia, are also naturally occurring, and they are very good for such an activity, and they really do help with fertility in the soil.
Yeah, and with the droughts you had for the last 2 years, did you notice a difference with farms who are doing FMNR and other farms that are doing it more unnatural? Do you see difference in their yields?
Yes, definitely. In the fields where they tried FMNR, I'll tell you that this is the 4th year this project is actually implementing FMNR. So we have some model farmers or champions who've been trying out FMNR, even in those dry years, but particularly 1 year was really bad, the year before last. They still managed to harvest something from there. But also, one of the things that come out very strongly recently in terms of how the trees, the FMNR trees, are helping is acting as windbreakers because of extremes in climate, because of the climate change impact. We've had a lot of windy rains, even early this year. And most buildings that survive are those that have got trees around them. When you talk about a lot of water washing away the topsoil, fertile soil, where you have trees and FMNR is being practiced, you find that soil erosion is not as much, and you still retain good soils, and you still are able to get good harvests. So these are some of the results. So we've seen this, and I think this is why there's been a good buy-in from the community, because they can see the difference for themselves, that these are not just trees that you leave for decoration or for watching, but they play an important role in the ecosystem, but also in issues of biodiversity and increasing fertility in the soil, but also preservation of moisture. The canopies that come with FMNR are also very good in terms of supporting other tree species that may need a canopy kind of environment for them to grow, thereby contributing to the food system in that area.
Are there also risks that farmers take when they implement FMNR and plant these nitrogen fixing trees? Are there any obstacles, reasons why people are opposed to doing this? What's the biggest obstacle?
Well, from our experience is that mindset change is quite a big challenge. And sometimes, especially that FMNR deals with naturally occurring species, people may be inclined to believe in exotic trees that are imported and seedlings are done. You think like if somebody has gone all this way to make seedlings, it means this really works. For naturally occurring trees, people believe that these are just there. They're just part of the trees. There are those myths that what can a local tree do to my soil? So mindset change could be one of those challenges that you meet early. And that's why our approach has been to find some champions, people that are willing to take a risk and try out and show. And when people see the results in those people's fields, or how the forests regrow back naturally just by taking the 5 FMNR steps, especially the first 3 of maybe just identifying the strong stems, pruning the rest off, and allowing those to grow, and how that differentiates the environment, then they begin to believe. But the early start is that people really don't easily take up this, and sometimes they'll think like, why should I just prune this tree and wait for it to grow? What is the benefit for me? Because sometimes we are looking for quick fixes and you want to see the benefit there but then in a season cycle where the rains come, and then the next cycle people begin to see how the others are harvesting, how the soil is improving in terms of fertility, and how it is preventing a lot of erosion, and then they begin to pick it up. So doing or practicing FMNR is the easy part. Mindset change is something that really you need to take a bit of time, because there will be maybe myths and there will be people not believing. And because I think naturally what has led to this state of affairs is that people think trees will always be there and they are God-given. We found them. The responsibility to take care of them and tender them and make them grow doesn't seem to occur naturally. So you need to intervene, and then once you get a buy-in and you have examples to show, you have evidence of how it works, then it becomes a little easier.
Yeah. They always say you cannot convince a farmer, you can only show a farmer. And do you notice the same, that, for example, if one farmer, one of your champions, has like very good results, talks about it, and then other farmers visit that farmer, they're like, oh my God, it works. And
I'm late. I should have started this earlier. And they pick it up. And so that's a journey that we have to walk through. We can't just jump the gun, but we have to be a bit patient for this to happen. But in Zambia, I'm glad to say that in the 3 districts that we've piloted, and I think the results are visible. The forests are there, but also the benefits that come. I'll tell you a little story. This year, for the first time in the 4 years that we've been implementing, we've received short videos of people plucking mushroom just near their households. Like, I didn't know mushroom can actually grow in this area. But because of the forest and the leaves that fall in there and the improved,
Soil.
ecosystem, now the mushrooms can actually germinate or come out within the area around their homesteads. So for us, it sounds maybe a small thing, but this is very good for food security. And if they have enough mushrooms, they can also sell, earn a bit of income. There's another very interesting story from one of our young champions. So I don't know if I could already go into this, because we also work with schools. So we have school FMNR clubs. And so one of those young people in a district called Sinda, where we're implementing in Eastern Zambia, Joshua. So what he did was his father was complaining that his chickens, when they go in the bush, they would get lost. He would not see them. He didn't know what to do. And this young man innovatively said, I can clean up your bush without destroying the forest. So by pruning off the shrubs and leaving the trees standing straight, his father could actually see his chickens from far off and started enjoying the environment. And the father and the mom actually joined the young man to prune even a bigger portion. And then when people started passing, because they are by the roadside, they started wondering, what are you doing? So the father was like, for me, I'm interested to see my domestic animals roaming around, my chickens there. For this guy, he's saying FMNR is a good method to regenerate degraded lands. But I like the beautiful scenery. I love the way the trees are coming up. So people started emulating, and so this started spreading. Each village around their homestead, they would do a small portion, maybe 1 or 2 hectares of land, and that's how the story grows. So regardless of what their initial motivations were, now it helps them in a lot more than that. And this is where now, for example, we got a story like, for the very first time, I've seen that mushrooms actually can grow here, but we've never, because what they used to do, they used to clear the entire land if they want to keep it clean. But this young guy said, no, there is a technique that doesn't destroy the forest, but you can still see your chickens roaming around, and they'll be safe from stray wild animals that could maybe pounce on them, and you can not, all this. So for us, that
It's
was
the best
a very
of both worlds.
both worlds, and very innovative way from the young man. And now the village, the community is learning from him, and it's spreading bit by bit. But I think that's a good seed to plant. So all the benefits that accrue to FMNR will begin to accrue in the community, but maybe not them knowing that from the beginning this could have happened. I told you about the issue of roofs being blown off by wind. So now they've learned that actually these trees protect their houses, and the wind doesn't really reach their homes as strong as it does where it's bare and empty.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's nice to see how these little benefits spread so fast. One critique, I'm wondering if you get that critique, is so if you start with a barren landscape and you go to the forest where the understory is cleared, then it's a win. But I'm wondering, if you have a forest that's already very nice and you clear the underbush, the understory, then you're a bit degrading the forest. How do you find a balance in like getting from barren ground to like FMNR forest, but like trying to avoid to have like a natural forest and degrading it by removing a layer? How do you find a balance?
Yeah, so that's I think one area that we are also delving in. So here is the thing, because if you have the bigger trees also growing, meaning the underbrush, of course, it's very potent, and there's a lot of it there, but it's not becoming anything because it can't get the light, enough light. So there is a balance also. If you prune off some of those, also the growth patterns of your trees is different, and that gives you better uses for the poles that you harvest. from that forest, okay? As long as it's a natural forest, if you prune off the competitor to the main trunk, then the main tree grows bigger and forms a better canopy at the end of the day, which is easy also, even better, to allow the sub canopy to grow better and be able then to support the underbrush of other fruit-bearing species that you can come. So in tendering, it means that you are supporting the entire ecosystem because you are giving an opportunity for light to also come in, but for also, it's like you need a bit of fresh air to also permeate under. If it's just a big bush, the result and the support to the rest of the food forest system may not be as good as if they are tended. So you are not destroying anything, but also depending on the use that you want. When you are pruning and cutting off, you also look what is the use of this particular species. Whatever species is good for medicine, for food, or for supporting the ecosystem, you don't prune. So the pruning is not reckless. Like you just go and slash. You actually
Good.
look at each and you select, you understand the tree species that are in that area and what uses they are for that community. So when we work with communities, we ask them to identify what are these species? What do you use them? And so then you selectively prune. There are two ways to prune. There's a way to just remove out, but there's a way also just to prune upward so that it grows bigger. So you leave out whatever is essential depending on the use of your forest that you're developing and also the uses of the tree species in that area, meaning you are not cleaning just for the sake of it is intentional and you understand what you want to benefit from there. So that's how I would actually answer that critique.
Yeah, that's a very nuanced version. I know that there are some studies being done by biologists, like measuring the biodiversity on like those systems and natural systems. Have they been done in your region as well, or not yet?
So right now, it's one of the biggest steps that we have. We've entered into partnership with 3 research organizations, institutions. So we've signed an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the Copper Belt University of Zambia. It has a good or a big school in natural resource management. Then we have also entered into a partnership with C4 ECRAF, and they were just visiting. They visited this district 2 weeks ago, and last week they were in Eastern Zambia, and they are coming up with very exciting concepts that we've not even thought about of how beneficial these plots that we are regenerating are. So they want to.
Was it Patrick Worms that came?
No, there's a lady, she's Ugandan, so they're just based within Zambia, but of course attached to the global C4 ECRAF family. And so
nice.
they want to try a lot of things in those plots, like, boost the mushroom production, boost the caterpillar production. Caterpillars are it's a delicacy. I mean, in the food chain, they're first level and they're very nutritious and they are selling very high prices here in Zambia. So they would like to see how they could improve their production and broadcasts from their research. Sorry, pardon me. And so we are looking to build new evidence that looks at what you're talking about, biodiversity. How does it improve food security? Maybe how does it improve yields? So we want to build an evidence base that is independent, done by experts, not only from the World Vision point of view. And the third one is actually the University of Zambia itself, the oldest campus that looks at these issues, that maybe we can have academics doing that research and be able to provide this evidence. But by and large, before even that happens, if you observe and go to the general farmer, they'll tell you that my soil didn't look like this. My soil has improved. or this soil structure is really much better than before. But that does not hold for scientific research. So this is why we have moved also to do scientific research to prove what we are observing on the ground.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice that I think it's important to have and the stories of the farmers, like you say, the farmer telling, "Well, my soil has improved," and then of course the partnership with the research institutes. So no, I think it's a wonderful job you're doing. I'm wondering, Jyde, you started your career in communications, but then
Yes.
you like ended up in regeneration. How did that happen? Like, can you tell me a little bit more about your backstory? Like, how were you as a kid? What was your trajectory towards regeneration world?
So I think I'm a naturally born communicator in that sense. I'm the one in the family that wants to tell a story. I'm the one in the family that wants to write. I'm the one in the family that wants to document stuff, but I like to share this knowledge with people. I think that's where my journalism started. You'd laugh. I still tell stories of how me and my grandmother used to protect our land in the village back then when I was young. And
Wow.
then later on, my late elder sister just said, why don't you just go and study communication? Because you are always doing this stuff. So why do you want to struggle and do something else? So I went into media and I worked for radio for 12 whole years in development support communication, doing documentaries, radio documentaries, talk shows, hosting news and doing pieces and all those things. I did that.
Nice.
But what I like
In
most is
Zambia?
that, yes, in Zambia.
In Zambia, yeah.
So you go and do these community stories and bring them on air, share with other people. And they were diverse across human rights, child rights, environmental protection, health, education, because you rarely would specialize in my time, like go in one field. And then at a later stage, I decided to go into international development, and issues of sustainable development started coming up with the Millennium Development Goals, the SDGs, and that's where I got into the environmental space now, studying a little bit how, because remember, I was like in what I call development support communication. So one thing that came up over and over is that the environment was being degraded and that was not sustainable for the present and future generations. And so I started inclining towards that. And so after when I left radio and media, I was still working in communication, but with GIZ as a communications and outreach advisor or specialist. So I was looking at doing these stories and collecting these stories and disseminating and growing them. And because the project was called Green Innovation Centers, we're looking at climate change. How do we reduce the impact of climate change in agriculture? I was working in the dairy industry in that project. But then I transitioned after that, then because of my international development. So I did a bachelor's, then did a master's in international development. And then when I finished my master's, that's when now I was with GIZ and then now to World Vision Zambia, looking at policy. But because I come with a wealth of communications experience, they combined my role with support to the communication aspect of the project. So this is how I find myself here. But now that meant, if you ask me, generally, I haven't got a qualification that is a standalone qualification in environmental management or natural resource management. It's been learning along the way. It's learning by practice, and
Beautiful.
voila, just came in because I can communicate this. So people are saying like, you know this stuff. Why don't you be the one to do the presentation or the trainings? Why don't you moderate and do this? So it's become part of me since I joined. Yeah.
Yeah. I once heard a guy who did some work. It was in another African country. I forgot where it was, and he said that the most return for the use of development money. So the north is sending money to the south to do all kind of stuff, and sometimes that money is like used very good, sometimes it isn't used very good. And he said the best example I've ever seen was like a very small amount of money, and sometimes you're talking about millions or even billions of development money. He talked about, like, I think it was between 10 and 100,000 euros that was spent on a guy like you, a communicator, who went around to visit the champion farmers. He interviewed those farmers. They bought airtime, and they disseminated these stories via the radio, and everybody has a little radio. So they were then listening to those farmers, and the other farmers were like, oh my God, if that guy can do it with just a shovel or just like some hand tools, I can do it as well. And that really stirred a little revolution in a good way of just highlighting the lighthouse farms. That's how we like to call them, or the champions. That this is like much more effective than like buying expensive machines, have them work for 2 years, and then the funding stops, and then those machines are standing there because nobody knows how to fix them, or the parts are not existent in that country. What's your vision on hearing this story?
Yeah, so you've nailed it in both ways, because I think for me, working for radio made me realize how powerful communication is, but not from my point of view, but from the farmer's point of view, because they tell the story of their experience, but also the people in the community are able to actually put a face to a concept. So it's not me, because I've gone to school and whatever, telling the story. But if they hear a fellow farmer and they can see some tangible change or improvement or difference between them and the speaker, then it hits, it makes sense. Remember earlier on, I told you about mindset change. Mindset change is difficult for me to do or to bring about in the community. But a fellow farmer whom they can even see or even at least understand, even in their local language, talking their language, using simple tools, if this person can give a convincing story, because they can actually authenticate and speak from where they've been and where they are and the possibilities of where they are seeing themselves, that impact, Louis, lasts a very long time in the community and is sustainable. And I think this is why concepts like FMNR, from my point of view, are very good. And because they don't need expensive tools. They will use their local tools. They will use trees that grow already in their land to regenerate, and they don't have to expend a lot of labor in terms of regenerating these trees. Meaning, once they see an example of where it is working, it is easy for them to pick up the concept, accept it, and replicate it, but also sustain these efforts, because it's a recycling of the forest. Once you harvest some trees, even after 2 years, they'll still sprout, and you have a continuous forest that comes back to you. It is what I like about your podcast when you talk about the food forest, because it feeds itself. We for example, in Africa, we grew up eating a lot of, especially me, in my part of Zambia, I grew up enjoying a lot of fruits. A lot of natural fruits that you just pick up in the forest and eat. A lot of mushroom in the rainy season. Like now, it is the rainy season in Zambia. You don't suffer when it comes to relish. We had a lot of wild animals, even passing through your yard once in a while. A stray one comes in. But over the years, because of the deforestation, degrading of the lands, all these things have gone. I told you the story about mushroom, that this year we received a few videos to confirm with excitement, I can pluck mushrooms very close to home. This is something that they only heard from their parents, that no, we used to have a lot of these. But when they see it and they start sharing it, and we must use what is accessible to them in terms of the media, and that's why I still love radio. I know now there's a lot of social media and all this kind of, but mainstream radio in rural parts of Africa, even in rural parts of Zambia, is still a potent medium to use in communicating these stories. And you can move around, sit around in the village, let them tell their story, profile this, and air it. And people can strap a radio set on their neck, riding a bicycle, going somewhere, or doing other business. They can still listen and learn. So I would totally agree that some of the ways that you actually spread the word is through communication, but sometimes the media or medium you use has to be appropriate to the community you want to learn and pick up stuff, but also accessible. And they must also be able to tell their own story instead of always listening to something that is brought about by a stranger. So their own story being told by their own people actually gives a very good chance of uptake, but also sustainability, because it becomes part of the community ownership. This is our own person, and they've experienced this development or improvement. I can also do it, and that's the kind of story that I'm privileged in a way, because I think I come with a combination of these communication background, but also experience in communication. I know what works and doesn't work, but also a bit of theoretical grounding in what to do. But I'll tell you, Luis, the best story is told by the farmer himself or herself in their own language. And if you can actually do this in their own field or environment, they are very comfortable and it's very authentic.
Yeah, we need to do more of that, and also like the story of finding funding and just having a mass network of journalists, local journalists, interviewing local farmers and airing it on local radios, because like that's the most affordable communication device. Like a Starlink satellite internet is not affordable for everybody and not feasible. You need to have money and you need to have electricity, but a radio, you can even have it on batteries and you can just have it around your neck,
even
like
solar
you say.
radios now. You have solar
Or
radios.
solar radios.
Just in the sun. So I just that. So what we did as a project when we just started, we actually, from our pilot districts as a catalyst country, we trained 11 journalists from around the country, oriented them in FMNR, how to tell the FMNR story.
Cool.
So I don't have to be there. Whatever is happening there, they can capture the story and distribute it through their channels. So most of them work for radio. And then we also have 3 from the national TV and radio station, but they are based in those districts. So when they do a story, they will send it to the national TV or radio, and it's aired like to the entire country. So even where I am right now, we have a lady from the National Agricultural Information Services, which is a national radio and TV station. And then we also have one from the Zambia News Agency. So this is like a government arm of information dissemination. So we always move with the media because they can pick up a story more than we can. I'm only one who does communication in the team, but the other people that we have oriented and brought into FMNR can do it more and more. And the more stories we tell, the more we spread the word, and the more grounded, the concept becomes, and a lot more people learn and pick up. Well, it takes time, but one village, one person, one village, one community, you are growing the reach, and as you reach more and more people, then it becomes more sustainable, and the contribution towards the general regreening of the country.
Yeah.
And then carbon sequestration, wherever it's happening, it's for everybody across the globe. So we are talking about all these concepts. It starts very simple, but when you go deeper, you see how much each individual actually contributes to that.
Yeah. And that's the start of a movement, and a movement is super important, but it's always very handy that the government is in line with what's happening. I've heard that you work a lot with government ministries. What
Yes.
have you learned about bringing FMNR into policy and extension systems instead of just treating it as a small NGO project? Is there like a moment where
Okay.
you felt now the government really understands it and takes ownership of it?
Okay, so I'll speak to it at two levels. So the first level is at district level. So in the pilot districts, even where I am now in Chibombo, the bylaw formation meeting we have all these people that I'm talking about: the Minister of Agriculture, the Forest Department, Minister of Fisheries and Livestock, water development, and then we have also, I've mentioned the media. So with the government, because they have an extensive extension structure on the ground, these are the people that train the farmers. So we integrate. When they are doing their natural work in terms of sustainable agriculture or climate smart agricultural practices, FMNR becomes part of the toolbox of practices that they will adopt. And also in the regreening communities model under World Vision, this is the kind of toolbox that we have. So FMNR does not go standalone. So sometimes you lead with FMNR, sometimes you lead with the regreening communities, strategy or model, core model. But this is what we have embedded in the government extension structure, because they are spread and they live in farming communities, and they are the ones that work with farmers every day. So at the beginning, sometimes it sounded like, it's, of course, the project comes with support and everything else. So I would say at the local level, we are very well settled. I don't have to be there. Sometimes we do support their movements because they may not be able to do that, but they are the ones that deliver. And it's very much accepted. At the national level, policy change windows don't occur regularly. It comes every 3 years, it comes every 5 years. But we've walked a very good journey with the government, because especially the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment under the Forestry Department, they are our main partners, even in terms of policy change, policy influencing. I've been doing a lot of these. And again, when we started, it was a concept. It's an NGO, it's promoting this. Now what we do is we take them to the communities to see how regeneration is happening. I'm glad to say we are contributing. The business plan I talked about for FMNR scaling is to regenerate 2 million hectares of land by 2033, which is also the target by the government to contribute to the AFRI 100. So you can see the marriage there. Yeah, so I remember one time we were having the International Day of Forest. So usually the minister will pass through different organization stands, the booth, to see what you do. And then when he came to our stand, he just looked at me and says, I'm not wasting time here. We already know what we do together. We let's just go and implement. Let me learn about new activities. For me, coming from the Minister of Environment, and for me, that speaks that, of course, they know. But that doesn't mean everything changes in one day. It just means they've bought this. But when there's a policy change window, you can influence to have it written in a policy document or a statutory instrument. But we move together. They invite us, they write to us, they request our support. And whenever there's something that is happening, they look to us to say, what you are doing is massive, it's good. Let's join hands together as a country and work together. So that brings joy to us, that at the ground level where we are implementing, all our trainers, those that are helping, even monitoring what our champions do, are from the line ministries. They are government workers. Then when it comes to policy and all those dialogue issues, So there's what we call in Zambia the regreening restoration strategy. There's a cluster being developed. So World Vision Zambia has been supporting the government to have a technical working group that is looking at restoration strategies in the country. And so from that perspective, FMNR is one of those that is part of something that works, low cost, and can be scalable or replicated by individual farmers, by communities. So it is that kind of working relationship or synergy that makes us happy that our work with influencing policy and working with government, embedding FMNR in the extension structure actually is bearing fruit.
Yeah. What's the biggest achievement that you're the most proud of with all the work you did with politics, with farmers, with the school clubs? If there's like one thing that you said, okay, like this is like the thing that I'm the most proud of all, what would it be?
So for me, the milestone came when our traditional leaders accepted to have the community forest management groups, CFMGs, formed. It was a big battle because they felt doing that would make the government grab land from them, because most of the land that we work on with the farmers is traditional land. The best moment for me came when the traditional leaders, we work with 7 chiefs, and these are the custodians of the traditional land where we work with farmers and community forests. So when they accepted that we would form the community forest management groups, earlier on, they were apprehensive. They thought it's the government wanting to grab land from them, like removing jurisdiction from them. So it was a whole, it brought most things to a standstill. But we engaged with the forest department, dialogue and everything until they understood that actually the government was giving them powers to manage the CFMGs, and all the benefits that would accrue would actually accrue to their communities. So for me, I think in my policy influencing, that just said, yes, we've made a very big milestone. Of course, there are a lot others, but this one stood out. In the schools, the way the young people tell their stories and understanding of the benefits of FMNR and how climate change impacts them is a beautiful storytelling technique, because they use drawings, they use poems, they use songs, they use drama. So when you empower young people with that kind of stuff at an early age, you know that the present and future generation is in safe hands. Yeah.
Beautiful. No, really love it. Before we end this podcast, I always ask the question: what would you do if you had a magic wand and you could really do anything with that wand? What would you do with it?
I'll just strike everyone to take a portion of land so that they start regenerating one step at a time. And when we accumulate whatever each individual is doing, then we would have a sustainable forest, but also a sustainable food system that regenerates itself, that drives itself, that is sustainable and speaks of resilience in communities, even in times of climate extremes. That would be the kind of magic wand I want, that boom, everyone just has their mindset changed and they begin to do something wherever they are, little as it seems, but it contributes to the larger impact.
Beautiful. Well, I hope you one day find that wand. I would really like to thank you for joining me, though it was a busy day for you with the workshops and so on. I'm really happy that you were part of the podcast. As you know, dear listener, go to foodforestpodcast.com where you can see the show notes. There we put some links to Jyde's work, what he's doing. You can learn more about it. And of course, also learn more about the courses we give and the designs we make. So thank you for being here and see you on the next episode.
Also, thank